Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be making a tutorial on how to cut and sew an off-shoulder bustier top. So if this is something that interests you, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So for this tutorial, we are going to be needing this fabric. This is our lining and the wording that we are going to be using to pad it. So without any further ado, let's go right straight into this video. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into two. I used my bust span measurement to fold it, and I added like extra 5 inches allowance to it. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead to the beginning of the fabric, and I'm going to mark 1 inches from the beginning of the fabric, and this is going to serve as our starting point. So guys, it's time to start inserting our measurements. So all our measurements will be starting from that starting point. Because it's an off shoulder, I'm going to be throwing off like 5 inches on the shoulder. The length you are throwing off depends on your preference. So I'm throwing off 5 inches. That means all my measurements, I'll be placing my tape on the starting point at 5 inches. So I've gone ahead to mark out the bust point. I'll go ahead to mark out the under bust, which is 13 inches. Then the waistline, which is 16 inches. And I'm going to add 1 inch extra as allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all through the fabric. So guys, I've gone ahead to make all these lines. That's our bust points. So that's our under bust, the waistline, and the 1 inch extension. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to insert my dart. To form my dart, I'm going to divide my nipple to nipple measurement into two. The nipple to nipple measurement we are using is 7 inches. So I'm going to divide the 7 inches into two, and that's going to give me 3.5 inches. But I'm going to add half an inch, which I'm going to use to join it when I'm done cutting it. So that means I'm going to be marking out 4 inches. So I mark out 4 inches on the waistline, 4 inches on the under bust, and 4 inches on the bust point. So after marking out all those 4 inches, I'm going to take my ruler and use it to make a straight line to connect those 3 points together. So guys, after connecting those points together, I'll now go to the line I marked as our starting point. That's going to be our neckline for now. So remember, I used 4 inches as the dart line, so I'm going to add 1 inches to it, making 5 inches. So I'm going to mark out 5 inches on the neckline. So I'm going to connect the 5 inches to the bust points the way I just connected it. So the next thing I'm going to do is that on the under bust, I'm going to go out by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to go in by half an inch. So I will repeat the same on the waistline. I'll go out by 1.5 inches. Going out means I'll go towards the side front by 1.5 inches, then towards the center front, which half an inch. So I'm just going to connect those 2 points together with a straight line. So on the bust point, I'm going to be coming down by 1 inches on the bust point. So that 1 inch that I came down with, I'm going to connect those 2 points on the under bust. That means the 1.5 inches and the half an inch. I'm going to connect them together to the bust point. So I'll use ruler to connect the one that is towards the center front. Then I'll use my curve rule to connect the one towards the side front. So now it's time to work on the neckline. So I'm going to, on that line, on that 5 inches line that I marked, I'm going to go out by half an inch, and I'm going to go in by 1 inches. So the 1 inch that I came in with, I'm going to use the straight ruler to connect it to the 1 inch that I came down on the bust points. Then I'm going to use my curve rule to connect the half an inch that I went out with the 1 inch I came down with on the bust point. So that's that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure the neck depth. So the neck depth I'm going for is 1 inch rather. So I'm going to go for the neck width of 5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark out the 5 inches now. So that's what I'm marking out. So after marking out the 5 inches, then I'm going to measure that space in between those two lines, and that's 1.5 inches. So I'm going to add it to the 5 inches that I marked out because they are cutting away the 1.5 inches. So I'm going to replace it like that. So on the neckline, I'm going to come down by 2 inches. So that's going to be our chest line. So that's where we are going to be forming our armhole. But before then, I will insert the bust pan measurements. So the bust pan measurement I'm using is 8.25 inches. So I'm going to mark that out now. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the 1.5 inches that we are cutting off on the neckline. I'll add to it. So then I'll add 2 inches as our seam allowance. So at that 2 inches that I added as seam allowance, I'll connect it to the neck width, and that's going to be our armhole. So after connecting that, I'll go straight to the waistline. So on the waistline, I'm going to insert my waistline measurement. So the waistline measurement I'll be using for the waistline is 6 inches. So I'm going to go ahead now to insert 6 inches on the waistline. So after inserting the 6 inches, I will replace the 2 inches that is at the midpoint. The 2 inches that we are going to be cutting away, I will replace it there. Then after replacing the 2 inches, I will add 2 inches for the seam allowance. So after marking that out, I'm just going to connect the waistline to the bust point. Then I'll go ahead and cut it out. So guys, this is our front panel. This is the center front, and these are the two pieces of the side front. So I'm going to go ahead and set it aside now so I can cut the back panel. So guys, I folded my fabric into two to cut the back panel, but I didn't add any zipper allowance because I'm not adding zipper to this back panel. So I already marked out the starting point, and I'm starting the measurement with 5 inches, just like we did for the front panel. So I'm going to go ahead and measure the bust points, the waistline, and the extension. So guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to insert my dart, and that is 4 inches. Remember, I used 4 inches for the front panel, so that's what we are going to be using for the back panel as well. So I'm going to be marking out 4 inches. Then I will make a straight line on both the waistline and the bust point. So on the bust point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So on the waistline, I'm going to go out on both sides of the dart line with half an inch. So after going out on both sides with half an inch, I'm just going to use a straight line to connect those points to the 1 inch that we came down with on the bust point. So on the starting point, I'm going to go down by 2 inches, and that's going to be our chest line where we are going to form the armhole. So now on the neck line, I'm going to go for the neck width of 5 inches. Remember, that's what we use for the front panel. So I'll be going down by 1 inches as well. So if you like, you might not form any you might not go down for the neck depth. You might just maintain that straight line at the neckline on the back panel. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to insert my bust pan measurement. So I'm going to insert 8.25 inches, which is the bust pan measurement that we are using for this tutorial. Then I'm going to add 2 inches to it, which is going to serve as our seam allowance. So at that 2 inches, I'll connect to the neck width, and that's our armhole. So I'll go down to the waistline now and go ahead to insert the waist span, the waist circumference, which is 6 inches. So I'll mark out 6 inches. Then I'm going to replace the darts and that's 1 inch. So I'm adding this 1 inch. Then I'm going to insert 2 inches as a seam allowance. I'm going to connect that together to the chest line, and I'm going to cut it out. So guys, remember I didn't add zipper allowance when I was marking out this back panel. So that's because I want to lace it up at the back. So to create the space for the lacing, I'm going to go ahead and mark out 1 inch from the waistline up to the neckline. So once I mark out that 1 inch, I'm going to connect the 1 inch together with a straight line. So when I connect it together with a straight line, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off, and that means our back panel will not be in two separate pieces. So the distance between the two pieces is what I'll be using to lace up this back panel. So now these are the two pieces for the back panel, and these are the pieces for the front panel. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut out the lining. So guys, I've gone ahead to cut out the lining for every piece of this fabric. So the next thing I'll do now is to go ahead and cut out the wording that we are going to be using to pad our bustier. So to cut out the wording, I'm going to mark 1 inch from the beginning of this bustier. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 inch from the beginning, that means from the neckline. So then from that 1 inch, I'm going to measure the distance between that 1 inch and the under bust, and distance is 6.75. So that's going to be the length for our pad, our wording. So the next thing is to know the width. So the width you are going for depends on what you want, but for me, I'm going to be using the dart line, the 4 inches that I marked out as the dart line, as my width. So the length of the wording will be 6.75 and the width will be 4 inches. So I'll go ahead and cut that out. So for the front part, for the center front as well, the width will be 4 inches and the length will be 6.75 as well. So I'll go ahead now and take my wording to cut this out on it. So I folded my wording into two, and I've marked out the 4 inches. So I'm just marking out the 6.75. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out now. That is for the center front. So for the side front, I'm going to cut it on fold as well. So I'm just going to insert the length of 6.75 because it's already on the fold of 4 inches. So yes, I'm going to cut it out like that. Then I'm going to take a piece of the front of the side front. So after taking the piece, I'm going to place the 1 inch at the beginning, the 1 inch at the beginning of the wording. Then I'm just going to trim off the excesses. So that's what I just did now. I'm just going to give it a slight curve at the side to give it a cup-like shape. So I'll go ahead and insert the wording. So guys, I've gone ahead to insert the wording to the fabric, and this is how it's looking. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and attach and join this center front to the side front. So I'm just going to place the center front on the side front like this, and I'm going to go ahead and use 1/2 inch to join them together. So guys, I've joined them together on I've joined the two side pieces to the center front with 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and notch it now so that the cup will relax well when we turn it to the right side. So after notching it, I will push out the cups, and this is how it looks like. Our bustier has been formed. You can see that it's standing properly. So the next thing is that I'm going to go ahead now and join the lining together. After that, I'm going to join the neckline of the lining to the fabric, flip it over, top stitch, and press it down. So guys, this is what I have after doing that, and so this is how it's looking now. So the next thing is I'm going to open up my lining and my fabric like this, place it on each other, the down parts, and sew it down to close this down part. Then I'm going to turn it out on the side. Then I'm going to go ahead and work on my back panel. I will join the neckline, taking the dart, and join the down parts as well. So guys, this is what I have after joining the down parts to each other. So I've gone ahead to give it a good press. I've gone ahead to work on the back panel as well. So I joined the down part and the neckline, and I've given it a good press as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place the side part of the back panel on that of the front panel. So that's what I'm doing now. After placing it on each other, I'm just going to go ahead now and pin it down on both sides. So once I finish pinning it down, I'll take it to my machine and sew it down on each side with the 2 inches allowance that we left. Then I'm going to fold in half an inch on that center back. I'm going to fold in half an inch and use my iron to press it down. I'll do the same for the other side. So guys, I've gone ahead to join the sides together, and after joining it together, I trim off the excess allowances. So and I've gone ahead to press down the half an inch allowance that we are using to close up the loop that we are going to be using for our lacing. So to make sure that the loops are inserted on equal sides, I'm going to just be going ahead now to mark 3 inches distance from each other. So after marking out the 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead and insert the loops inside the back panel at that 3 inches I just marked out. So guys, I'll take it to my machine and sew it down like that, and I'll do the same for the other side. Then I'm going to lace it up and we are done. So guys, this is the final look of our bustier. This is the front part, and this right here is the back part of our bustier. So thank you so much guys for watching this tutorial. Please do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel to enjoy more content. Till next time, bye guys.